The Vino Geek Podcast, wine from a Kiwi perspective. Welcome back to the Vino Geek Podcast. This week, as I mentioned, it's all about, things in wine or the styles of wine that hurt us. Now, I was going to go through all the different types of, things that do hurt us or do affect us. But at the end of the day, that's really impersonal. And I've kind of already done it. I did it from the angle of, sulfites and histamines and this and that. And I was just like, as much as I wanted to do this because, and I'll get into a reason why, I just realised at the end of the day, let's be more personal. Let's tell a more personal story and a personal journey into these wines that hurt, and why do they hurt? I mean, my story will be different to a lot of you out there, but it'll be very similar at the same time. And I will intertwine it with other people's experiences and what have you, and what they went through and how, kind of help them on their journey and finding those wines that did work for them rather than what was hurting them or just didn't work. So, yeah. Okay, so the catalyst for doing this was the fact that I was sent a wine, and from a producer that I enjoy the wines from and are friends of the podcast. And I was looking forward to the wine. I tasted the wine. I did the big spiel on, recorded a spiel about how good the wine was and everything else, and it was great. But I really enjoyed the wine. But then that was just tasting the wine. That wasn't drinking the wine. Unfortunately, it was a different story. When I was drinking the wine, I could feel it in my throat and in my chest. Acid reflux. So, unfortunately, with higher acid wines, they hurt me. They irritate me. And I love those higher acid wines. This was a red and a Pinot, and I love Pinot. But Pinots in this style, the lighter, fresher, is more vibrant styles, hurt me. They really repeat on me. I get massive acid reflux. I have to counter it with some sort of antacid. And it's a nightmare. I'm burping and I'm uncomfortable, and yeah, it's not nice. And unfortunately, it happened with this wine. And so instead of doing a episode around this wine and how cool it is, a chilled red and different chilled red wine, changed completely because of what the reaction I had. Then I thought, I actually, literally, the day that I'm recording this, I tried a wine. Had company come in, as a rep for a company come in, taste through the wines with me, got to their Gamay. It's delicious, like picture perfect Gamay. However, I was just tasting the wine. I saved a little bit because, again, there's no point in doing an episode about wines that hurt and actually reviewing a wine that hurt me. And so I thought, this could because of the style it is. And so I tried it again. And I thought, is there something there? I was still finishing up the meeting with the rep. And then I finished the last little bit in the glass. And for the next hour, I felt it. Sorry to rep. I believe she'll probably be watching this episode because of the fact that I said the wine will be the wine of the week. But unfortunately, it's not, because it is another one of these wines that hurt me. And it sucks because, yeah, the wine's delicious. But I can't really, especially for this episode, but I can't really review wines that hurt me. What's the point of that? That doesn't help you. You're probably, if you're in the same boat as me and you taste the wine that I review and I only tasted it, so I didn't swallow it, you'd go home, you'll drink that wine, and all of a sudden, you're not feeling great. Everything goes out the window. It's all a bit of a mess. And then you look at me and go, this guy's, what is he on? He doesn't even know anything, or he's just selling this, or he's just pushing this. So this episode's changed on its head, and it's just full disclosure. It hurts me. As much as I love dry Riesling. Dry Riesling does the same to me. It repeats on me. It gives me reflux. Some Sauvignon Blanc does, you know. And yeah, I just love Riesling. So I do steer clear of Sauvignon Blanc for the most part. I will now if I'm at a place and the wines are just not really where I'd go to, what I drink, I just default to the Sauvignon Blanc. So that kind of works. Actually, something I didn't mention. This little change up behind me. It's school holidays, so our son has taken over my normal backdrop for recording, so I had to just sort of flip it around a bit. Yeah. So if you're noticing a little bit different behind me, that's why. And yeah, I'm not trying to cash, so I'm not the man in black, so I do dress in other attire from time to time. So that's why, and it's a little bit cool where I record, so not wearing, I'll put a hoodie on. Anyway, I digress. The other things that hurt me are wine high in alcohol or high in potential alcohol is probably the better way of describing it. And this is probably something that most of you out there will be affected by and you won't even realize it. So what I mean by potential alcohol is the fact that, if a wine isn't fermented to dry, there's sugar left in it. And that's, I'm talking about the potential. So it could be at 14%, but there could be another 2% of potential alcohol. So that's pushing it to 16%. So that's going above and beyond a normal table wine. Once you go over 15%, it's a fortified wine. For want of a better term, a port. That's a future episode again. We will be ripping into that because it frustrates me when people go, oh, this is like a port. Not all fortified wines are port. And so we will be diving into that. But that's a future episode. This one is, hot climate wines. And I have this, it's a theory. It's anecdotal. It's not, I don't believe it's scientifically tested. I haven't looked in to see whether somebody has really looked into it. But it's the idea of grape varieties have a optimum level of alcohol or potential alcohol. And if you exceed that, things change. Things aren't quite right. So that affects you. So what I'm meaning by that is you can have a 15% Grenache, your Cote de Rhone or Chateauneuf de Pape, the Southern Rhone style wines. And it won't affect you as much as, say, a Merlot or a Malbec that's been pushed to the 14.5%. There's too much alcohol for that grape variety. That grape variety is sit at the 13.5. And you might think, how does half a percentage of alcohol / 1% affect that much? It does. It does. You might not realize or think it does, but it actually does affect things so much. If your body is accustomed to drinking those higher alcohol wine, you can tolerate it more. And this is how alcohol tolerance works in general. You know, the more your body is exposed to alcohol, the more tolerance you have. And that goes with the higher percentage alcohol products you have. So if you're drinking port all the time, a 15% wine is just par for the course because you're drinking an 18% wine. Now, if you drink spirits, same thing. Higher alcohol, not so much of an issue. But if you don't, if you're mainly drinking, like myself, who drinks mainly Pinot Noir and, mainly Kiwi or lighter European style wines, especially white wines. I enjoy the European white wines. Right. They sit at a sort of lower alcohol because they don't need to get them that ripe. And they try not to. And so those wines, I'm so used to drinking those wines, so that when I do drink a Shiraz that's at 15%, it hurts. I have one glass and I wake up with this horrendous hangover. That horrendous. I mean, it's not so bad with the more expensive ones, but still I avoid. I try to avoid those bigger, heavier ones. I have a small glass if I'm at a family get together or what have you, and I'll have a smaller glass. I'll have other wines to offset that because it does hurt. And I don't want to wake up secondhand because 9 times out of 10, I'm going to work the next morning. And I don't want to be battling a hangover when I've only had, one of these glasses of wine. I might have had one or two before. And, I can have three, 4 glasses at a family dinner and I'm okay the next morning. But not if I'm having a high alcohol wine. So those affect it. And I guarantee you there's plenty of you out there that are the same. Californian wines, American wines, they hurt me too. They're high alcohol percentage and potential alcohol, and whether that's residual sugar, that's sugar in the wine, fruit sugar. It's not refined sugar. Let's be fair. They haven't added the sugar. The sugar's already in there because it's so hot that they get it so right that the wines are just like that. So, they hurt me and I feel it pretty quickly. I feel it dehydrating me. The head starts to pound like dehydration. So, yeah, I avoid those wines too. Californian Chardonnay. So you got a Lionel's, there won't be a Californian Chardonnay on this. Not because it hurts me, because it's so big that it doesn't suit the food. That's a different story. If you're going to American diner style, Californian Chardonnay, perfect. Because the foods are big and full and rich, and cry out for that. But not a sort of Italian Mediterranean sort of themed restaurant that the ones that the food is lighter and fresher, more nimble on its feet. So why would you throw these big Chardonnays at it? But it's another story. Anyway, yeah, these big alcohol wines hurt me. I know they hurt a lot of you out there, and so I avoid them. So unfortunately, if you like that style, it's hard to replicate. One that I do suggest, if you do like that style, is try Viognier. Viognier is higher in alcohol, but it's built to be higher in alcohol, if that makes sense. Because if you look at Chardonnay, and this is part of my theory on the whole, different grape varieties have different optimal alcohol levels. So Chardonnay is from a cool region, its home is Burgundy. It's cool. So between 12 to 13.5%. In the very hot vintages, they're having maybe 14, but that sort of 13 mark is 13.5 is ideal for Chardonnay. It doesn't want to go further. It's not built to go further because once you push it further, you lose acidity, you lose balance. And one thing with traditional Chardonnay is balance, is the acidity is still there. If you get it too ripe, too high in alcohol, you lose that alcohol. So, that goes to my theory of potential alcohol. So why should we drink 14.5%, 15% potential alcohol Chardonnays? Why? It just blows my mind that we'd even think that it's a good idea. I know it can deal with it. I know it can make decent wines in hot climate, as opposed to Pinot Noir that doesn't. But, it's still a cool climate grape variety. So it has a lower threshold for alcohol where, as I said, Grenache, the hot south of France, it has a higher tolerance for alcohol. It can still operate properly at a higher alcohol percentage, so less likely to affect you so much. Still can have the issue, and I still a little bit hit and miss with Rome style wines, so I don't drink them too much. I tend to look at Spanish Garnacha, but being the Spanish Garnacha, I run into the hit and miss on the other end of the scale, where sometimes it's too acidic and I get acid reflux. So it's a bit of a minefield. You've got to sort of hang out in the middle, and it can become a nightmare. And so this is me just bearing my issues there. As far as others, it's and this is in researching for the original theme of this podcast, this episode, I was going to talk about it's purely anecdotal and it actually flies totally in the face of all the science. But people that suffer from gout and they like, for instance, Sauvignon Blanc, they get gout, why are they getting the gout? And my thought was, let's try them on unoaked Chardonnay. Reason being is that Sauvignon Blanc, they don't put it through a process called malolactic fermentation. Now, malolactic fermentation turns the malic acid into lactic acid. Now, the thought process was that gout sufferers also struggle to eat tomatoes, and tomatoes, the malic acid, da da da. So I started giving the old person a unoaked Chardonnay that I knew had gone through malolactic fermentation. So they didn't get the oak flavours, so they just got the fruit. One particular guy would add a squeeze of lime juice, so it tasted more like a Sauvignon Blanc. No gout. So I thought there's something going on here. However, if you look at all the science, that it's totally blows my theory out of the water. It doesn't even transpire to that. So I'll just go back through my notes so you can sort of hear what, so for instance, where did I find that? It's the fructose that causes more the gout, not the type of acid. Type of acid has nothing to do with it, which was really interesting. And so I was just like, okay, so is there lower fructose ones? No. So my purely anecdotal theory worked, for this person, but I can't sort of claim that it does anything. And maybe if I did do a Master of Wine, and this was something that I thought would be my dissertation, because what initially sort of spun me down this track is my mother, who doesn't drink wine anyway, very little. She gets headaches and she gets gout. So she gets gout, but she gets headaches from drinking white wine, which, again, hadn't looked into exactly why though, but my thought process was she can drink some red wine. So should I try her on white wine that's gone through malolactic fermentation? Now, I never got to that stage, but I had tried this with a customer at the merchant, and that worked for them. So, and then I parked it, just things happen, this podcast, so on and so forth. But yeah, got me thinking again when I had these acid reflux moments. I'm thinking, why don't I talk about that? And so I was thinking, okay, let's talk about this theory that I have, but I can't substantiate it, so I can't back it up apart from that one story. So anyway, yeah, the other main thing that I really wanted to touch on with this, just because it says, you get red faces, they're headaches. I mean, sure, histamines, sinus headaches, there's plenty of histamines in wines. And people have talked about this, and I've talked about this on another episode. The other thing that people do talk about is this, sorry, I struggle with saying this word, and it does my head. There's a compound that's um, that's found in the skins of grapes, and fermentation brings it on. And quercetin, that's it, quercetin. Now, people have talked about this too, and they contribute that with the the flushes, the headaches, that sort of thing. And so, yeah, something to bear in mind is that it's hard to avoid, but the more time in the sun, the greater the concentration of the quercetin. So for you that have had issues with headaches and you've tried antihistamines before you drink or what have you, or you get the hot flush, you get the red flushes. Try wines that are from cooler climates that don't see as much sun. Sure, it might not be your style, but give it a go because it might actually work for you. As far as you as that, again, if you suffer from the headaches and the sort of dehydration and the hangover, the alcohol content or the potential alcohol, the residual sugar in it, drink wines from cooler climates. So look at, just Google or ask Siri or ChatGPT. Just ask them what are cool climates. I mean, New Zealand, pretty much the whole country is a cold climate, so you're pretty much right there. So you can find wines that are lower in alcohol, and my magic number is 13. It's people that do struggle with those wines at that higher end, I always suggest 13% as a magic number. You look at the back, you see 13% or lower, buy it. You shouldn't have a problem. On the flip side, if you suffer from those wines that are higher in acid and they bring on the acid reflux, well, again, look at the hotter climate. Look at the fuller, riper wines because the acid drops. Now, one thing I do find is that when I drink a wine that may have higher acid but has a bit of bottle age, I tend to be better off. Whether that's part of the acidity is slowly dropped out over time with the tannins, with the colour components, everything else, they lignify and drop out, potentially lowering the acid level, which I kind of tend to agree with that. It makes sense to me. Sure, I should know this verbatim, but at the end of the day, that's just my experience that I've had is that even the higher acid wines that are mature, I don't have an issue with. So yeah, that's something to think about is something with a bit more bottle age. And those of you who come into Limels, it's something I try to do is make sure that the wines, particular wines have a bit of bottle age because it does help. It does help with everything. Just makes it easier to drink and makes it a smoother, rounder experience. And also, you don't have those spikes. So it doesn't really combat with the food so much. Unless it's supposed to, like a Sauvignon Blanc or a Pinot Gris, which is relatively low in acid anyway, so it can be fresher, and that helps. Actually helps rather than hinders. So, yeah. And if you are on both ends of the spectrum like myself, yeah, again, try drinking things that have a little bit more age or in the middle, things like your Malbec is delicious. Cabernet from New Zealand, great wines. Not so much acidity. Sometimes you can get some with a bit of acidity. Again, same with Southern French. As long as they're they're not too heavy in Grenache or not too high in alcohol, go for it. Again, watch the alcohol content. Make sure it's sort of warmer climate wines that don't have so much alcohol. Happy days. You should be rock star with those. After the break, we'll wrap it up there. But after the break, we will have our wine of the week, and literally, it's just going to be a wine that I've had recently that no dramas with. Yeah, so that's coming up after the break. Just taking a quick pause in the episode to remind you to like, subscribe, comment, and come and follow me on socials too. Now the wine of the week. As I said, this is a wine I did try a little ways back that had I had no issues with. And the cool thing about it is that it's sort of mid-weighted. It's not too light. It's not too heavy. Right in the middle. And it just offers a bit for everybody. So it is Spanish. So something else that's a little bit different. I don't do too many foreign wines. I tend to stick with the Kiwi wines. But yeah, the Dera Crianza 2020. So Crianza just represents the age of time, the time it was aged for. So around about the year mark. So very much Kiwi in style, rather than a little to no oak or a lot of oak. But pretty much how Spain works. And it's from Rioja, so from the famous Rioja. So hot climate, but not over the top as far as alcohol goes and everything else. It's right in the middle. So the colour, deep garnet. So it started to offer up those slightly aged colours, but not there yet. On the nose, raspberries and plums and blackberries, full of fruit, but toasty spice and a little bit of prune, which was very cool. The palate was mid-weighted, but super balanced. So it was, a little bit of time in the bottle, so that just settled it down. The tannins are lowy and dusty. One thing for me with Tempranillo, which this is that you get a dustiness to it. It's sort of like it's a hallmark of Tempranillo. The acidity was moderate, but in balance with the tannin, just creating a nice little structure without being too much. The finish was long and elegant with, again, the toasted spice, the cocoa slightly drying, which is typical of Tempranillo as well. And yeah, all the while that fruit's just there. As far as the score goes, 92 out of 100, really solid wine and really good value. And a 19 out of 20. Food-wise, paprika obviously is a big thing. But, tomato-based foods, you can have like a paella, like a seafood and stuff like that, with rich tomato sort of dish with in medley of vegetables. Just you can be quite versatile with it, but make sure it has bold flavours to stand up to the dryness and just give a little bit more to the wine. So very simple, very tasty wine that's well worth hunting out. It's not the easiest to find, but if you do find it, snap it up. And it goes for anything. If you go to a Spanish section in a wine shop, you see Crianza, look for a couple of years of age, and you're pretty much going to be right on the money with it. It's going to be very similar to this. So don't be afraid if you can't find Idera. Then obviously Friday when I post the wine of the week, you will see the picture of the wine. You will see the stockers, so you'll be able to find that and chase it down. So yeah, as far as next week goes, yeah, we will be covering. white blends. So something a little bit different. We're going to look into white blends and how they're not, well, not just white blends, but blended wines, and how they're not as bad as you think. So until then, thank you for listening. Sante, or not just listening, thank you for joining us. Sante, and God bless.